Hello, friends, and welcome to a hard puzzle by the New York Times. It's October 6th, 2022. The reason I include this particular puzzle in my list of solves is that I find it really easy. And I want to use it as a good example of how to go about solving a hard Sudoku puzzle using just mental powers only without any use of pencil marks. Just logic. As you will know by now, I try to never use pencil marks if they are not necessary. Sometimes they are necessary, of course, but in most cases, or I should say in all cases of the hard New York Times puzzles, pencil marks are utterly unnecessary if you put your mind to it. So without further ado, let us start on this puzzle. And here is a New York Times pattern that we see very often. Look at the 1, 3, and the 5 here. The 1, 3, and the 5 will have to go in these 3 cells in some order. We don't know which order yet. A 2 and a 9 here and a 6 and the 1, 3 and a 5 to go here. That leaves us with a 4, 7 and 8 to fill these 3 cells. Still in some order, not yet to be determined. But spotting these kinds of patterns makes it a little easier to solve puzzles, I think. That out of the way, let's find an easy 8, shall we? There's an 8 here and an 8 here, and I immediately look to the row above to see where I can place an 8. And see, there's an 8 down here that prevents it from going here. So since an 8 can't go in these 2 cells because of this 8, and they can't go in these 3 cells because of this 8, and they can't go here because of an 8 here, we have found the first digit, and that is an 8. It goes here. And we can find a 6, the 6 here, and the 6 here puts a 6 in this cell. By the way, if you get lost in my sometimes weird trains of thought, you can always stop the video or pause it or rewind it and try to retrace the logic. The logic in these Sudokus usually is very simple. And another pattern, I don't even know if it is a pattern, but it's something that I always look for. Look at the 7 and the 2 here. They prevent this cell from being a 7 and a 2. And these 2 cells cannot be 2 and a 7 because of the 2 and a 7 already in this box. So we know now that a 2 and a 7 will have to go in these 2 cells in some order. The order at the moment isn't terribly important, but it tells me that I need a 3, 9, and a 5 to complete this row. There's a 3 here, and there's a 3 here, so we now know that the 3 will have to go here, and this cell now and this cell have to be a 5 and a 9 in some order. The 3 here and the 3 here gives us a 3 in this cell because of this 3 and this 3. You see how we don't even have to use pencil marks. We can keep this in our short-term memory, which often needs to be just a second or two. And we can continue. We can find a 5 for this cell. How do we find that? Well, we have a 5 in this row, and we have a 5 in this row. So where now can we put a 5 in row 4? It can only go here. And we can find a couple more 5s, I think. Look at the 5 here. The 5 tells us that a 5 for this row 2 will have to go here or here, because we need a 5 for row 2, of course, and it cannot go here, here, or here because of this 5 and this 5. Now, the important part of this observation is that if we have a ghost 5 in one of these two cells and we have a 5 up here, we know that a 5 will have to go in one of these two cells to complete the 5 in row 3. And since there's a 5 already in this cell, we now know that the 5 will have to go here. And now we can scan downwards and see that the only place for a 5 in this column, and therefore in this row, is here, because of the 5 here and the 5 here. And remember before we said that this cell and this cell, they have to be 5 and 9s. Now, clearly this cell cannot be a 5 anymore, therefore the 9 goes here and the 5 here. And we can find a 5 for this cell now because of the 5 here and the 5 here and the 5 here. How many more 5s can we find? Well, there's a 5 here and here that puts a 5 in one of these 3 cells, but 2 of them can't take a 5 because of the 5 here and here. So the 5 goes here. And here is another pattern. We can find a pair now, a pair of 7 and 9s. How do we go about that? Well, we have a 7 and a 9 here, and we have a 7 and a 9 here. And that rules out these 4 cells for 7 and 9s, meaning that a 7-9 pair will have to go in these 2 cells. And before we continue with that, let us just put a 4 in this cell, right? Because of the 4 up here. Now we know that a 4 will have to go in this cell or in this cell because we still need a 4 for column 6, right? But didn't we just establish that a 7 and a 9 are the only possible values for this cell? Okay, so that gives us a 4 for this cell. And looking further at column 6, we need a 6, 7, and a 9. We can't put a 6 in this cell because of the 6 here, and we can't put it here because of the 6 here. But we can put it here, and we must put it here because there's no other place it can go. And remember, a little earlier, we noticed that these 2 cells have to be a 6 and an 8 in some combination. Now, where now can we place a 6 in column 4? It can't go here or here because of this 6. And it can't go here because of this 6. So it must go here. And we will need a 1 and a 2 to complete these 2 cells. Because, as we've said repeatedly, these 2 cells are now 7 and 9 in some order. And also, please recall that a long time ago, we established that a 1, 3, and a 5 will have to go in these 3 cells. The only digit missing here is a 1, and of course it has to go here. And since we also know that these 2 cells have to be a 1 and a 2, we can now place the 2 here and the 1 here. And that gives us a 2 and an 8 to complete column 4. And of course, since this is a 7 or a 9, this also has to be a 7 or a 9, and this has to be a 7 or a 9. Remember when we said that these 2 cells have to be a 2 and a 9 in some order? Well, given the 2 here and a ghost 2 up here, we can place a 2 in this cell. And we can find a very convenient shortcut to placing a 7 in one of these cells. Let's examine this column. The column needs 1, 4, 7, and an 8 to complete. There's a 1, 4, and an 8 already in this row. So this cell has got to be a 7, and this one now must be the remaining 2. And we can find a 7 for this row now. Because of the 7 here, a 7 will have to go either here or here. And with this ghost 7 and this 7 here, we can place a 7 in this cell right here. The last 2 remaining digits will have to be a 4 and an 8 in some order. For column 7, we still need a 3, 4, and a 9 to complete these 3 cells. There's a 4 here and a 9 here, so this has got to be a 3. And this cannot be a 4 because of the 4 here. Therefore, it must be the 9, and the 4 goes here. The last digit up here now is a 1. And since we know that one of these cells will have to be a 4, and we have a 4 down here, this is the only cell where we can place a 4 in row 3. And that leaves this cell to be filled with an 8, which is the last digit that we need. These two are 2 and 9. These two, of course, must now be a 4 and a 7, and that means that this cell will have to be a 3. The 3 here and the 3 here puts a 3 in one of these 3 cells, and there's a 3 here and here already, so there's a severe limit, and the 3 must go here. And finding this 3 gives us a 7. Yes, this 7 can see these 3 cells, and this 7 can see these 2 cells, and that means that a 7 must go here. And scanning upwards now, these 2 7s put a 7 in this cell here. And now we can solve some of the pairs we had going on everywhere. The 7 here puts a 9 here, and a 7 here, and therefore a 9 here. And this 7 and this 7 gives us a 7 for row 2, like so. And there is a single 9 to be found. It goes here because of these 2 9s and the 9 up here. This is the only available cell for a 9 in this 3 by 3 box, also called box number 4. We are counting box up here: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So let's plug in the 9. And the 9 here and here now gives us a 9 for this cell because of the 9 here. This cell will have to be a 1 because of the 1 here and the 1 here. And this 1 down here tells us that a 1 will have to go in this cell or in this cell. So in combination with the 1 here, we now know that this cell has to be a 1, and the last cell in this column must be an 8. And that 8 puts an 8 in this cell, and the last digit here is a 6. As we recall, these two cells had to be 6 and 8 in some combination. And the 6 here and here gives us a 6, the last digit for this row. And the 6 here and here and here gives us a 6 for column 1. We are getting very, very close now. We need a 4 and a 2 to complete this row. There's a 2 already in this box, so the 4 will go here and the 2 will go here. This 2 and this 2 gives us a 2 for this cell, and the last digit here is going to be a 1. It goes here, and a 1 will have to go here, of course, because of the 1 up here. The last digit is a 4, and these two 4s gives us a 4 for row 2. The last digit in this box is going to be an 8. And that gives us an 8 for this cell and a 2 for this cell. And remember the 2 9s we had going on up here? The 2 here and the 2 here now puts a 2 in this cell and a 9 in this cell. And the last digit that we forgot down here now is a 7. And that completes the puzzle. I think you will agree that this wasn't overly difficult, but it gave me the opportunity to explain in detail the thought processes that can be used to solve puzzles even harder than this one. I hope you enjoyed it and that you'll return back here for more. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.